Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have gotten some pretty crazy polling recently. There's been polls left and right, pro Trump, pro Kamala. I want to hone in on one specific poll that is extremely bullish for Donald Trump. And then we're going to go through all of these swing states. And some people won't agree. They'll say Minnesota's for sure going to Harris. I would probably say it's going to Harris as well. But just in general, these are the major swing states. I am also including Virginia. I'm not including any of the districts. You could argue that Maine at large could be a swing state. The Nebraska second, I did see a recent poll that had Harris up big. You could argue that's an outlier, but for the sake of the argument, we'll just leave it as is. So these are all the major swing states. And I want to show something that is pretty remarkable when it comes to the election. So you can see this Gallup poll, and this is based on historical party ID trends and the election results. Party ID margins have consistently aligned with popular vote outcomes, and this analysis offers a compelling case for why tracking partisan leanings is a powerful predictor. And so this is based off of Gallup, and I do want to give a qualifier before I factor in the prediction, the election result based off of this. This is not Gallup's final poll. Right now, you can see in 2024, they have the electorate right now as +3 Republican, which is a crazy swing. If you look at the last 4 election cycles, their final poll, and again, it's not the final four, the final poll in 2024. There's going to be another one. I don't know if there's going to be 2 more or 1 more, but obviously they're going to release, all the pollsters are going to release their final polls late October, early November. But, will it really swing that much in the span of 5 to 6 weeks? Probably not. So let's see, what does this mean? Well, in 2008, when it was Obama versus McCain, you had, in terms of Gallup, their final poll, they had it as a +8 Democrat electorate advantage, meaning there were a lot more Democrats than Republicans, and that resulted in a 7.2 victory in terms of the popular vote for Obama over Romney. So they were off by basically 0.8. If you average out 8, +8 for the Democrats, they win by 7.2. When you go to 2020, I don't know, they're doing this out of order. It's kind of annoying, but you go to 2020, this would have been the Biden versus Trump. They had it as a +5 Democrat electorate in their poll, and Biden won the popular vote by 4.5. So they were 0.5 off. In 2012, it was Romney versus Obama. They had the electorate +4 for the Democrats, and Obama won by 3.9. They were 0.1 off. In 2016, they had a +3 electorate for Hillary against Trump, and she won by 2.1. They were 0.9 off. So in essence, in their last 4 polling cycles, they were, and this is just the popular vote, obviously, but we know if Trump wins the popular vote, he's guaranteed to win the election. But this shows you, and you can see in 2024, the recent poll, which was just released a few days ago, and again, there's going to be another one. If this was the final poll, I would be like, oh my God. I mean, I don't want to guarantee a Trump victory because this thing could be completely off, but if you base it off of their last 4 election cycles, they've been very accurate in terms of the popular vote versus just the electorate. They've been like within a point of all of it. And again, there's going to be another poll that gets released, and you could argue if you're a liberal, they're going to get it wrong this time. Their polling's bad. Just because they've gotten it right the past 4 election cycles, that doesn't mean for sure 100% they're going to be within a point. And I agree. I mean, they could, but I'm just saying this is really good news, honestly, when you look at something like this. 2024, a +3 Republican electorate. And again, even if, let's say that the final poll comes in +2, even if it's +1, even if it's tied, even if it's Kamala +1, you would and the popular vote margin falls within, that 1 point error. This is really good news for Trump. So let's just say the final poll is like Republican +3. I mean, I find it hard to believe that Trump would win the popular vote by, I mean, it might be a little bit off. Like he might be able to win it by 1 to 1.5, but I'm just saying, who really knows at this point? But I'm just going to fill out the electoral map. If Trump wins the popular vote by like 2.5 to 3, I would say I think he wins pretty much all of these swing states outside of Minnesota. And you could also argue for New Hampshire and Maine at large at that point. Like this would be a royal flush basically for Donald Trump. I mean, it would be Nevada. It would be Arizona. Right now, in terms of these 2 states, it does look like Arizona a little bit more likely to go to Trump than Nevada, which is what you want. You're talking about 11 electoral votes versus 6 electoral votes, but I think Trump gets both of them. It seems like there is dialogue and there is some credence to the idea that Harris is really surrendering Arizona and Nevada, at least to a degree, and focusing on Georgia and North Carolina. The problem for Harris is we've gotten great polls out of Georgia for Donald Trump. And in this scenario, I mean, if Donald Trump wins the freaking popular vote, he's not going to lose Georgia. It's just not going to happen unless something crazy happens where he way overperforms in a state like New York, because then the popular vote margin would get closer, a lot closer because of the population in New York. But just in general, I mean, plus honestly, just all the polls we've seen recently, I mean, it's like the past 6 polls out of Georgia, even Real Clear Politics is like +3 for Trump. That's the average, like 2.5 to +3. North Carolina would for sure go to Trump in a scenario where he won the popular vote. Virginia, I think, would go to Trump very narrowly. I mean, if he wins the popular vote, to me, Virginia is a little bit different than Minnesota because Virginia has Youngkin. And, you know, people talk about, well, Minnesota with Walz. Walz really has no impact on Minnesota at all. It's not like he's going to help. And it's the same thing with Vance in Ohio, by the way. It's not like Vance is a big impact to where Trump's now going to win Ohio by 15 to 20 points. It's not a situation to where, and obviously Trump was never going to pick him, but if Trump had DeSantis as his VP, I think he'd probably win Florida by like 17 points or something like that. But obviously DeSantis kind of had the issues where it was going against Trump and he became less likable because of that. But just in this scenario, Trump would sweep the Rust Belt for sure. I think Pennsylvania probably a little bit easier to win than Michigan and Wisconsin, but Wisconsin and Pennsylvania would be easier. Michigan would be the hardest. Minnesota, I still think, well, I don't know, man. In this scenario, it is pretty crazy. If Trump wins the popular vote by like 2 points, you could argue that Minnesota would also go to Trump. It's not like it's a crazy liberal state. I mean, it did swing that way in 2020. 2016, it was very close. It was similar to Virginia in that sense. And then also, if you're Trump, you could honestly take New Hampshire, which isn't really getting talked about, and then also Maine at large, and that would get you over 340. When it comes to any of these other states, I have seen polls out of Colorado. There was a recent poll that had Harris up 11. I just don't see it as a viable state for Trump at this point. And really all of these other states. I mean, New York, people talk about it because Trump had that rally. I mean, if he keeps it within 12 or 11 points, you could be looking at maybe 2028. It gets close. But at this point, I think when you're arguing semantics like that, I would much rather see Trump be able to secure Texas in the sense to where he wins it by 6 or more points, because we've seen with Texas, and this was just going to happen organically because there's a lot of people from California that moved to Texas and they still vote liberal, but we've seen it come down in terms of overall margin to where, like, in 2012, it was 11 points, then it was 9 points, then it was 6 points. So we want to see Trump is able to extend that margin a little bit, even with a lot of the people moving in from California, and California possibly losing a lot of electoral votes in the 2030 census. But in general, if you're talking about Trump winning the popular vote, I do think a lot of that is probably going to be off of New York, because remember, Trump lost New York by 23 points. He's down in the recent poll by 13 points. That's a 10-point advantage. And by the way, that's a pollster, I think it was Siena, that got Biden, that way overestimated Biden. So Trump might lose New York by 9 or 10 points, and people would be like, wow, that's crazy. And that would help him significantly in terms of the popular vote. Obviously, it would not help him in terms of the electoral college, but it would still be like a good sign. If you're losing New York by 9 freaking points and you're a Republican, you're probably not going to lose the election. It's the same thing like Virginia. If you're losing Virginia by 2 points, do we really think Trump's going to lose North Carolina? Probably not. So, even if he loses some of these states that are more liberal closely, I mean, obviously in this scenario, you'd probably be talking about the 2nd district also going to Trump, but there was that poll of the 2nd district that had Harris up by 15. It's a hard, it's a district. It's hard to pull. We wish that Nebraska was winner take all, but either way, I do think you could see Trump up to around 340. That's probably the high watermark if this Gallup poll is correct. And again, it's just very interesting to see this. It's not the final result, but you're talking about 5 to 6 weeks before an election. How much is this really going to shift? Unless it's some crazy outlier and it shifts like a full 3 points or actually would have to shift like 6 points to go to Dem +3 +4 for them to feel comfortable about them winning. Because even if Kamala wins the popular vote by 2 points. And I do think this could be an election where they really get going. And I heard that they were plotting to try and eliminate the Electoral College a few years ago. I don't know how far that got, but there were like 14 states that signed on to eliminate it. It's not going to happen because you need like the majority, and that's not going to happen. But I do think if this election falls to where maybe Kamala wins by 1.5 in terms of the popular vote, but loses the Electoral College with Trump getting around 306 to 312, there's going to be a significant movement to try and get rid of the Electoral College. Not that it matters. I'm just saying that's probably what's going to happen because people are going to be so triggered that it happens again with Trump to where he loses the popular vote but wins the Electoral College. But according to this, I mean, this could signal that Trump might just win the popular vote anyways, depending on what the final number is. If you're Republicans, I mean, I would feel comfortable if the final number is Dem +1. If it's tied, Republican +1, even Dem +2, you'd have to feel pretty comfortable. Although, again, it does get a little hairy when it comes to relying on exact same results as 2020. Because I know we look back at 2020 and we say, oh, Biden won the popular vote by 4.5 and Trump barely lost the election. In essence, Trump could have lost the popular vote by 4 points and still won the election easily because the swing states were so close. But you have to understand, a state like New York, Biden blew Trump out. That's not going to happen again. So Trump is going to gain votes just in terms of the popular vote in the state of New York, probably significantly, because if he only loses it by 12, he lost it by 23 in 2020. He's gaining just popular vote numbers, raw numbers. He's not getting any electoral votes because he's not winning New York. So the scale is going to be a little bit different in terms of that. So it might not be nearly as crazy as, oh, Trump could lose the popular vote by 4 points and still win the election. I don't think it's going to be as crazy because I think Trump's going to make it closer, possibly also in like California as well, and also Illinois. So those 3 states, just because those states, we've all seen what's happened where people are leaving them. The Democrats, even though they'll constantly get elected, they're the majority, seems like they're very unpopular, or at least they're less popular than they were, to where Trump's going to be able to gain some advantage in those states. So listen, this is very interesting. If Trump does end up winning the popular vote, maybe I'm underselling it. Maybe you're talking about a Colorado shifting. Maybe you're talking about an Oregon. But right now it just seems so unlikely because of how Trump alienates people. It's one way or another. You either love him or you hate him. And these liberal hubs, they just hate him so much, they're really not going to shift. But either way, these numbers would be pretty crazy for Trump. Also, New Jersey would be the other state. I haven't seen many polls out of New Jersey. I think New Jersey is also going to shift to the right, but I don't think Trump's going to win it. That's the problem. We were talking about New Jersey back in when Biden was really polling badly and saying maybe New Jersey becomes a swing state. I haven't seen any polls. The only polls I've seen out of New Jersey were like, Trump was losing to Biden by like 9 points, but I haven't really seen any Harris polls. Maybe there was one that had Harris up by 12 or 13. I don't know. I don't really remember. But either way, this is probably what it would look like if Trump was able to win the popular vote. You could argue maybe, there's some other states, but it's just going to be hard. Also, you could argue New Mexico. That would be the other state as well. That would put Trump right around 350. But if Gallup is right, and we'll see, because again, this is not their final poll. If this was their final poll, it'd be crazy. It would be very, very good news. But it'll be interesting. And see, they would project, I guess, based off of the data, Trump to win the popular vote by 2 if it was a Republican +3 electorate. A lot of these pollsters are sampling. It'll be unweighted, and then they'll weight it to like a Dem +2 or +3 sample. Whether or not you think that's accurate, I mean, I'm okay with a Dem +2 or +3 sample in terms of polling. The problem is when they make it like Dem +5 or +6, especially in swing states. That's when it becomes an aberration. And also, they just don't get realistic results. I mean, I've seen pollsters in terms of ages, in terms of Democrats versus Republicans, which way they're voting. A lot of it is inaccurate. Also, political leaning is another problem with a lot of pollsters, where you'll get, oh, they slightly lean left, and when you combine that with leftists, it's like 60%, and then the Republicans like 30%. It's ridiculous. But either way, guys, these numbers do look very good. And we'll see if this continues. We'll see if they release 1, maybe 2 more polls before the election actually happens. But that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.